Ahead on Face the State, saying goodbye to 2019 and hello to 2020. This was a year of change, a new governor, some new mayors, some new laws, a battle over tolls, plastic bags, and a missing persons case that captured national attention. We will look back and ahead with Max Reese, the communications director for Governor Lamont. Also here, Rick Green and Kevin Rennie of the Hartford Courant. And we will also remember Denise DiCenzo, her sudden and shocking death, one of the biggest stories of this year. It's all straight ahead this Sunday, December 29th, 2019.
From Eyewitness News, Connecticut's most watched local political program, this is Face the State.
Good morning, everyone. I'm Dennis House for this last Face the State of 2019. This year ushered in the Lamont era, a new governor with a new attitude. And here with us this morning is Max Reese, the communications director for Governor Ned Lamont. And Max, it's a great pleasure to have you on here. You and I were friendly competitors when you were a reporter, and it's just an honor to have you here. So
yeah, it's great to be here. And I want to let you know, too, because you're a friend. My family knows you. We've been so saddened by Denise's passing. I just want to let you know we've been thinking about you guys and folks here at Channel 3, Dennis.
Well, thank you so much. I appreciate your call. And it's this past week, it certainly has been tough. And we're going to hear from some of the coworkers that
Looking forward to seeing
adored coming up a little bit later in the program. So I want to ask you, because you were a reporter at the beginning of the year, you covered the Lamont era, the inauguration, the beginning of it, the first session. What was the biggest highlight for him as a governor?
So I think from that point, when I was on the other side of things, if you will, I think that seeing a different way of doing our politics, right? He's a guy, Governor Ned Lamont, he's a listener. He's somebody who's trying to have those substantive conversations. And to say nothing of his predecessor, but just a very different kind of a dialogue, a positivity, a optimism. And I think that he's kept that throughout his time as governor. The first 6 months is a new session. You're just inaugurated. You're basically tasked with figuring out how you're going to run the state for the next 4 years in the first, couple of weeks. And look, it wasn't necessarily perfect, wasn't necessarily easy, but I think that we've had some incredible accomplishments this year, especially the last 6 months, just recently in the last week, the hospital deal and restaurant settlement, things that have been kind of nagging wounds, if you will, that have now been healed. And that's what he's about, solutions and being Mr. Fix-It.
What was his biggest disappointment from 2019?
Well, look, we're still talking about it, right? I think that we want to get a transportation solution. I think there's no doubt that you want to get that done. You want to get this issue done for our businesses, for our families, for our communities. You can't grow an economy unless you can move. And that's basically what Governor Ned Lamont's been saying for the better part of a year now. From trucks only to all cars, now back to trucks only. But that's how the political winds shift. But I'll also say that where it's been incredible is the stability now for Connecticut's for Connecticut's budget, right? Moody's, Bloomberg, S&P, Fitch, all saying what kind of great steps we've taken with the rainy day fund. That's the kind of stuff that maybe a little bit disappointing on the tolls front, or the transportation front. But the stability that this administration has brought to the state is something we're very proud of.
Last week on our Candy and Coal program, Kevin Rennie gave the governor some candy for changing the tone of government. And he believes he's a little bit easier to deal with than perhaps previous governors. How important is that to getting things done?
So yesterday we were speaking with some of the most important hospital executives in the state of Connecticut. They had an acrimonious relationship with the previous administration is probably an understatement. And I'm talking with them and I said, what's it been like the last 6 months we've been negotiating this? And they said, we've been able to talk, able to have a real discussion, real conversation. Governor Ned Lamont disagrees with people a lot. But you don't hear us just screaming from the rooftops about it because that's not how he is. And he's a genuinely nice guy. He's a listener. He's a collaborator. And I say he's optimistic. He doesn't look at a problem and come up with the reasons why we can't do it. He looks at it and says, how do we do it? And he's proven that. I think we're going to get there on transportation as well.
So what does he want to do in 2020? What do you foresee him proposing and getting done?
We're going to get a special session done on transportation and getting the bond commission, a bond bill done. We need to get those communities the funds that they need to get their snow removal, to make those local investments. Those are paramount. We also want to see a future on sports betting. We want to see what does that look like, right? Is Connecticut going to enter the 21st century when it comes to sports betting or not? We also need to keep the momentum going when it comes to our budget, right? We need to make sure that we're making the right the right borrowing decisions to provide that predictability for Connecticut families. And of course, for our Connecticut businesses, the ones who are employing those families, making sure that they have food on the table every night.
I first met Ned Lamont in 2006 when he ran against Joe Lieberman. He's always been very candid. He's not a controlled candidate. He just sort of makes his own decisions.
No, he is not.
Says his own thing.
Yes, sir.
But for you have to control the administration's message. Does he ever say anything and you're like, wait a minute now?
Yeah, I think I got a text message just a moment ago. No, I'm kidding. No, look, he's a free thinker. He's a free thinker. And there are moments where he says, I think we should do this. And then what we end up doing as a staff is say, all right, how do we get there, but craft it the right way so that the Connecticut middle class family and everyone out there is hearing the right message. But I will say this, being able to have frank discussions with Governor Ned Lamont is fun, it's exciting, and what's cool about it, and is also, look, a little petrifying from time to time, my current role, is you don't necessarily know where the conversation is going to lead, but I think that's what makes him such an approachable guy and such an approachable leader.
You know, he seems to, he's not afraid to talk to opposing media.
Not at all.
You know, conservative media, things like that. How does he finesse people or sort of get them to perhaps come over to his side?
He listens. He listens. Governor Ned Lamont doesn't say to somebody, I disagree and we're not going to do that. That's not how he is. He's been on the phone with so many conservative talk radio show hosts. You tell me how many governors in the United States of America who are Democrats, who are going on conservative radio. Or if there's not much of a liberal radio audience, but it's not like you're seeing many Democratic governors go on Fox News. But Governor Ned Lamont wants to have those conversations. He doesn't mind a friendly and a healthy disagreement because he thinks that's important for our discourse.
You've seen the poll numbers, the approval rating, pretty low right now. How does that impact him? I mean, he says it doesn't bother him, but...
It doesn't. Doing the right thing, it doesn't matter to him, right? I mean, look, if it was easy, right? If it was easy when it came to... Take your pick, when it came to whether it's a budget or tolls, he doesn't just take the easy way out in any of these things. He's doing what he knows is right. That's going to put the state on a sustainable path. You know, when the staff put together a budget back in the early spring, or I guess it was late winter, early spring, depending on your definition, he wasn't just looking at a budget for 2 years or 4 years. He goes, what is this supposed to look like in 10 years? Those aren't easy decisions between a pension crisis, between revenue shortfalls and all these things, but he's trying to do what's best. It's not necessarily going to be popular, but look, I give my kids vegetables, right? I put them in front of them every time, my 2-year-old twins. They don't necessarily eat them, but they know what's best for them.
In terms of who is his closest ally in the Capitol right now in the legislature, would you say?
I think that we have different relationships with different folks. I'll tell you this, that he's in touch with them all the time. I think that Governor Ned Lamont has had more outreach with Republicans, especially on transportation, than maybe any governor has ever had. Hundreds of discussions with Len Fasano. We have a very close relationship with Senator Fasano, despite what some of the letter back and forth might be, some of that correspondence. But it's about keeping communication lines open. So we've definitely had a close relationship with Republicans, despite maybe that wider gap, the fact that Democrats have so many more votes in both the House and Senate.
Does he ever listen to any of his former opponents? For instance, David Stemmerman has not really criticized the governor, but he's put some things out there, suggestions, and he said that he's talked to the governor about it. Bob Stefanowski, much more critical. Joe Ganim now on his side, helping him out with things. Does he ever talk to these people?
David Stemmerman and the governor have had numerous discussions where David has said, Mr. Stemmerman has said, look, I really think we should be doing X, Y, Z on pensions. I would really like you to consider this idea when it comes to transportation. When you're a willing partner, when you're somebody who wants to have a discussion, Governor Ned Lamont will do that. If you're somebody like, another person who maybe ran against him and you don't want to have those discussions, it's kind of difficult to engage because do you really want to take a pot shot on talk radio or on Twitter, or do you want to have a real discussion? Governor Lamont wants to have real discussions.
Was he surprised by the opposition to tolls in terms of the no tolls movement and the rallies and things like that?
I think that when you're trying to do the right thing, they did this from a budgetary standpoint when they did the all tolls for cars. And that was when all tolling all cars. That was when I was a reporter, right, Dennis? And even in the press, we're like, that was a big flip-flop. You can't deny that. I mean, you got to be pragmatic about this. And I think that I think what the surprise was the fact that there was an organized opposition to it. However, that doesn't make it necessarily the wrong thing to do when you're doing something. And look, like I said earlier, the political winds have shifted a little bit. We're listening to our legislative partners, and we know that we're going to do the right thing for Connecticut companies and businesses in January.
Max Friis, so great to see you in the program.
Good to be here,
Happy
Dennis.
New Year to you and your family.
And to you.
Thanks for coming on. In a moment, we'll take a look back at the top political stories of the year with Rick Green and Kevin Rennie. And later, we remember Denise DiCenzo. And we invite you to watch past editions of Face the State right now on our YouTube channel or our app.